Good morning. My name is Marianne Riopel, and I'm here today to speak to you about ethical decisions in business. I have several objectives set for the day. These include defining what moral dilemmas are, identifying common ethical theories and principles which are present during business decisions, to understand and identify one ethical decision model, which is known as situation analysis decision, and to become aware of what the steps are in application of this particular decision-making model. An ethical dilemma occurs when adhering to one norm breaks another particular norm. These are the most difficult decisions to resolve, and it requires an extensive evaluation of the specifics of that particular situation. In this particular situation, you're looking at issues which involve a right versus right decision. These are not decisions where something is right versus wrong. That is, clearly something is not the preferred method and would not be acceptable. The basic ethical principles include non-maleficence, beneficence, veracity, loyalty, and justice. And I will define these in just a few slides. So non-maleficence basically means to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So what your intention is going to be very important. So your goal is to not do harm and not to intend to do harm, even though that harm might occur and that is not something that you intended to do. This harm can be either physical or emotional. So it could actually be hurting someone physically, or it could be affecting them emotionally so that they are uncomfortable or having some issues with that particular decision. Beneficence, on the other hand, is when you do something not only to avoid harm, but also to do good. So in this particular case, one would be trying to, for example, not do harm by some actions of your company, but also try to do some good for the community while you're doing that particular action. Veracity is pretty understandable, and basically it's just in relation to being truthful and being honest in your actions. Loyalty is one of the most commonly involved principles and one of the ones that is most commonly violated in everyday business decisions. Basically, you want to treat others in ways that suggest that you care about what's happening to them. And this applies to both how you would approach a customer as well as your fellow employees. Justice refers to treating others equitably. And an important distinction is that we don't treat everyone equally, but equitably, and so that we try to give everyone the best that we can, understanding that being equal is not always a possibility. And basically this refers to just basically being fair to other individuals. So these principles seem pretty logical, but what do you need to do if some of these principles are in confliction with each other? So the best way to do this is to use an ethical decision-making strategy. Okay, so, excuse me, let me go back a slide here. Okay, there is the SAD model, which basically stands for Situation, Analysis, and Decision. This was created by Louis Alvin Day at Louisiana State University. And basically what he tried to do was to build critical thinking into the moral reasoning process. There are three basic steps. The first is a situational decision. The second is an analysis of the decision and when you actually apply the moral theories. And then finally, you come to a decision or an ethical judgment. Okay, so what is the situational decision? Basically, this is the time when you acquire the facts and the knowledge of that particular situation, so you can understand what the context is of that ethical dilemma. So the first step is you need to describe the facts. So you need to look at the purposes and intentions of the action. You need to identify the principles of the matter, as well as any values. So that is actually not exactly ethical decisions, but the values of the different individuals. And you need to state the ethical issues clearly, simply, and directly. The analysis is this time when you debate the relative importance of conflicting principles, values, or facts. So in this particular case, you want to look at possible external factors, what you would usually do in a particular situation, who would be affected, so that would be yourself, colleagues, other sources, advertisers, society in general, and emotional and rational responses. During the analysis section, you also want to apply the moral theories and consider ethical alternatives. So you need to examine the situation and list the competing principles and values involved. And you need to look at who will likely be affected by the judgments, as well as external factors which may actually impact that judgment. And this is the time when you talk about the pros and cons of your different possible answers to these particular dilemmas. Okay, the final section is the decision process. What's important to recognize is that you don't want to make a decision until this final step. You want to kind of be somewhat objective when you're looking at the situational definition as well as the analysis section of this particular decision-making model. So your final decision should not be made until this final step. And you need to be able to justify your final decision based on any criticisms that you would feel outsiders might have. During this time, you're coming up with an ethical judgment or conclusion based upon all of the available information and alternatives. You're identifying a resolution or a decision and deciding your course of action. And you need to be able to defend this decision based upon the moral theories, the situational definition which you established, as well as the analysis. Okay, so let's see how we use the SAD model. Consider you have a purchasing manager for a large company who wants to give you an order, and it's their first order for your company, and they expect you to agree to making a $200 donation to his favorite charity, which is a local youth team. So how do you respond to this particular case? Okay, so the first thing you need to do is decide which ethical principles are at play. So is it veracity, non-maleficence, beneficence, justice, or loyalty? And in this particular case, it seems to be justice and loyalty are the most involved principles, even though some of the other ones do come into play. So you need to look at the facts. This particular individual did request a monetary quote-unquote donation. Some might consider it actually a bribe. You need to consider what the impact on other youth teams might be. You need to think, is this fair to other business competitors? And is this a fair use of company resources? So what is your ethical question? You could have two basic questions. Is it fair or just to your stakeholders to use company resources to support a youth team? And are you supporting the youth team as a community service or only to serve the needs of your own particular company? Okay, so when you go to the analysis section, your conflicting principles are loyalty and justice. So you need to make sure that you've considered all the facts. Have you considered the youth team? Have you considered your competitors? Have you considered the community? Have you considered your employees? And you need to look and see if you've missed any important facts. So for example, what is your true motive for sponsorship? During the decision phase, you need to decide upon a course of action. And in this particular situation, you could support the league instead of just the one team, or you can refrain from support at all to avoid misinterpretation from others. And you need to defend your final decision based upon ethical principles. So you could look at fairness to the community and the sports league, or putting community needs over business needs. So thank you for listening to my talk today on situational analysis, decision, and ethical principles, and use this information to move forward with your assignments.